Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we resume our Fear the Masses data pack experimentation, and we'll be looking at the Anarch HQ pressure cards that force the corp to mill their R&D from successful HQ runs. Now, we aren't going to really go into Fear the Masses today. My deck doesn't run Fear the Masses. Instead, we're going to look at BHAGAT. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrongly, but this is the way I'll be pronouncing it from now on. So, when you build a deck with these new cards, you have to ask yourself, what are the weaknesses of these new cards and how can I tweak my deck such that it can compensate for these weaknesses? So think about it for yourself before I review my thoughts on it. What are the weaknesses of BHAGAT and what can I do to short those weaknesses? Have you thought about it? Personally, I think BHAGAT is a bit of a problem card because it is unique, firstly. So you really want to play 3 copies of it because seeing it early is good. You don't want to see it late because by then HQ will be nicely defended. And it's like KD Jones, you have multiple copies of it which you don't really want to use. So Foul seems like a pretty natural include. Next thing is you need to clear a good path to HQ. Unlike Fear the Masses where you attack once for massive damage, with BHAGAT you want consistent HQ access, which means you probably want Ice Destruction to clear the way to HQ, and most likely you want more forms of HQ pressure, which is why I'm going to play BHAGAT Noise today. So I'm basically going to just jam BHAGAT into a typical noise shell with ESOPs and cash and all the good stuff, all the viruses, and we'll see how things go. I'm up against NEH today. So noise is good because noise already has pretty good HQ pressure in the form of Lamprey, Imp, and Data Sucker. Let's further improve that with BHAGAT. Now, I am also running Run Amok because if the co-op decides to nicely ice up HQ or rush behind a remote, Run Amok can punish that very severely. So I'm going to poke HQ here to see the David. I don't mind poking HQ at this point because I have all the answers to ice in hand. If it's low strength I have Faust or Parasite, and if it's high strength, like in the case of Wraparound, David is there to save me. So I fetch an early Astro off the top of R&D, which is always good. I'm very glad that he didn't actually get to see that. Or rather draw that. Unfortunately, I don't really have my draw engine set up, so this is where I check archives. To force the Jackson, hopefully, and sure enough he pops the Jackson and I play the wild side. So that's a pretty decent start, and I ditched the Run Amok because it is very expensive to play at this point, and that's kind of one of the weaknesses. If you don't have an ESOPs or a cash early on, that Run Amok is pretty useless. My opponent then plays an exchange of information. The good news is he didn't trash my wild side. The bad news is I'm now stuck with 2 tags that I cannot clear because I'm too poor. So immediately you see a big problem with any resource-based deck in general, especially Noise, who is so reliant on ESOP's wild side. After thinking for some time, I realized that there was no way I was going to shake both tags, and my opponent was more than rich enough to wreck my assets next turn. So, yeah, I'm pretty screwed at this point. A cash would save me right here, but no cash in sight. The gamble is good, but I can't play the gamble this turn. The best I can do is click for 3 credits and hope that my opponent doesn't find a closed account. So that would be really crippling, and that forces me to ditch some very important cards. That Grimoire is a big loss. The Fouls not so much because I don't think my opponent's going to rush behind remotes. This seems like acid spam NEH considering that you see a temple, and of course he trashes my assets. So yeah, losing the wild side is a very huge deal for Noise. That means that I cannot find my viruses, and more importantly, I'm still stuck with the 2 tags. And immediately that is where the problem of BHAGAT, where I truly realized that BHAGAT is a problematic card. It is a resource, and in the tag dominant meta of today, BHAGAT might not be a good idea after all. Because if you are crippled with tags from mid-seasons or breaking news, you're not going to be able to enact your plan. You're not going to be able to mill as many cards from HQ from R&D as you would like. So I managed to reassemble my wild side after going broke essentially, losing my entire show gamble and all my money for that one wild side. Thankfully he hasn't found his 3rd breaking news, but he fast tracks here for a 3rd breaking news, so he's essentially found it. So here's a giant misplay. What I should have done was to install the Imp and run server 2, because fast tracking the breaking news basically telegraphs that he can score it next turn. So that basically means that he either has a Baltic in hand, which is kind of likely, but it's kind of a waste at the same token to use a Baltic on a breaking news. More likely is he has a Sand on the table. So what I really should have done was to install the imp and trash the Sansan. So that was a very big misplay from me. And that's going to cost me my Aesop's pawn shop, which is a huge deal. I wanted the Aesop's sucker so that I could pawn the sucker for 3 credits, but obviously I'm not even going to get my Aesop's. He's going to trash it. Very wise decision. Thankfully, my wild side is still there and it draws me into a cash, so I still have the option of gaining a bit of money. And with the imp, I can now safely trash a Sansan. So it's not the worst, but I definitely misplayed that quite a bit. And now my opponent just asset spams out, and this is just terrible for me. I can't afford to spend all 3 clicks checking. I only have 1 imp token, so I can only afford to check one of them. I trash team sponsorship because there's a good chance that one of them is either a Sansan or an Agenda. I don't even get to trash a team spawn because he activates the Cyberdex against me. So at this point, the only thing I can do is to stock out cash with cash and cash. But the cash is not gonna cash me much because cash. No, yeah, what's the point of money right now? My opponent is just running away with the game. And at this point, I'm definitely on the back foot right now. Even though the scoreline is pretty close, 2-3. I'm pretty locked out. Archives is doubly ice, HQ is doubly ice, I don't have a BHAGAT up. I do have the Wildside Chronotype combo, but what's that gonna do? Sure, I ran 3 copies of BHAGAT in this deck and I still haven't seen any of them, but even if I had, would I really install it? I can't, because now I'm getting tag flooded again. My opponent punishes me for running with Seesaws and trashes my Wildside. So, look at that. Like, if I have BHAGAT out right now, I'll be forced to clear the tag right now. It's just a very, very awful proposition. So, yeah, like I don't even get to enact my game plan of massive HQ pressure because the tags keep coming and the tags completely wreck any sort of HQ pressure I intend to place. Without cards, I'm not able to pressure HQ. I'm not able to recur parasites that often because I don't have the money, because I don't have resources. So you just see it's just a cascading chain of problems, and BHAGAT doesn't help to solve those problems. Noise is not in a very good place right now because of all the tags, and this clearly shows. I'm gonna play the cash here and kind of just concede the Astro script that he fast tracked basically. I know for sure he has a Sansan there, and I probably should have tried to contest it with the imp or something, but at this point I've just given up on the game. I know it's not very good to showcase a game where I'm giving up, but I think it's quite important to highlight this when you are building a deck nowadays. I thought BHAGAT would be pretty good in Noise, accentuating the HQ pressure and mill that Noise poses, but unfortunately it is kind of a win more card. It doesn't help you get out of sticky situations such as this where you're tag flooded. I still haven't cleared the Seesaws tag if you haven't noticed. And yeah, it just doesn't help you if you're behind. I mean, I didn't even draw it this entire game, but even if I had, so what? At this point, I'm just playing regular Noise without resources. Basically, I'm just spamming viruses at this point. I'm trying to calculate the best way to get as many mills as I can before making a last-ditch run on Archives. I knew there was an Architect that he reinstalled with Team Sponsorship. My opponent did play this very smartly. He reinstalled it with Team Sponsorship. I knew about it, and I knew that I couldn't really get through. So I had to let one subroutine on the Architect fire because I was down to 2 cards. So I let him see the top 5 cards of R&D. If there was a Jackson on there, I would immediately lose. Otherwise, I might have a shot at getting lots of agendas. Of course, that didn't happen. And my opponent basically won from seeing the cards off of R&D. So that was a game that turned very ugly. It should be noted that I completely forgot to put Clot in this deck, and that was a huge deal. If I had Clot, things would have been very different, and you definitely need to run Clot in Noise nowadays. Cutting cards is so difficult though. So that was an incredibly disappointing game where I was handily and soundly defeated. But I still feel that this is an important video to upload, even though it might not be the most enjoyable from your user perspective. I'm sorry if any of you all were expecting me to actually install BHAGAT and make things happen with it. It didn't happen. But it's important to ask yourself, why was I not able to make that happen? Even if I had drawn any of my 3 BHAGATs during the game, would anything have changed? And the answer is obviously no. Why? Because I was gearing my deck towards the best case scenario. Imagine this, I have a Data Sucker, or maybe even 2, and a Lamprey, or even 2, an Imp, and a BHAGAT running. a single HQ run will allow me to disrupt his HQ by milling cards from his hand, possibly a Biotic Label, a Fast Track, or a Scorched Earth. The Data Suckers will allow me to snowball out of control, because if he installs more ice, I can simply Parasucker them down. And lastly, the BHAGAT just accentuates the mill and causes him to lose faster via archives. That is an amazing best case scenario. But did I consider worst case scenario? No, I didn't. Clearly from this game, the worst case scenario was something I couldn't deal with. When I get tag flooded, I can't even play a BHAGAT even if I had it in my hand, let alone draw cards to gain money through ESOPs, or draw solutions to the tag flood. And that's the big problem right here. I didn't take into account that resources were a problem and that Noise's economy engine is very slow to begin with. So these are factors that you have to take into account when deck building. You can't just say, I'm gonna try to aim for this best case combo and then cry when someone plays a deck that seems to hard counter you. It's your fault for not accounting for the worst case scenario in the first place. And I think this is illustrated nicely in the work or magnum opus of the best deck builders around, such as the Big Boy. If you go on Netrunner DB and Google the Big Boy's Bagass Wiz, you can see how he constructs his deck to take care of the weaknesses. He runs a lot of resources: Earthrise Hotel, Daily Cars, Cardi Jones, Liberator accounts, but those are faster economy options compared to the very slow drip of cash ESOPs. So he's able to get lots of money quickly and doesn't really suffer from getting slapped with EOI breaking news tags or CSOS tags early. Then he even has non-resource economy options like Desperado, but he still keeps the Parasucker combo to allow him to clear the way through HQ to activate BHAGAT. So that is a much better example of how you should use BHAGAT, and if you're looking to try BHAGAT in your deck yourself, you should take these into consideration. I hope you've learned something from this video. I sure have. Even though it was disappointing, I hope you've come out of it with better knowledge on how to build decks with new cards. Thanks for watching and happy net running. Goodbye.